Okay, welcome everyone again to the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force. For those of you that do not know, my name is Rob Bartela, and I'm with the museum's Public Affairs Office. Today we have a series of interviews for you. We'll start off with the Air Force Chief of Staff, General Dave Goldfein, and then we'll follow with some other interviews. So please remain seated until the official party departs, and then we'll reconfigure for the next round of interviews. Because we have a short time period here today, we ask that you limit yourself to one question. Please raise your hand and you'll be called upon. And all questions should pertain to the 75th anniversary of the Doolittle Tokyo raid. And so we're set to begin. Without further ado, let me introduce Air Force Chief of Staff, General Dave Goldfein. Thanks.
I want to check to make sure, yes, it is afternoon. Good afternoon. And thanks. I'll just maybe a couple of really quick opening remarks, and then I really just want to get into your questions. Today's actually sort of surreal to me as the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Because when I was a cadet at the United States Air Force Academy, I used to walk by this display in a place we called Arnold Hall, which is where the cadets gather for briefings. And I walked by this display of goblets the entire time I was at the academy. And you study the history of this mission as a cadet. And so for me to be here for that final drink from that bottle of cognac was actually surreal and very personal. And you know, when you think about these 80 young men who stepped forward on what turned out to be a one-way mission and put service before self and showed the world that there is no target that we can't hit. And in some ways it was the opening of joint air power. You know, so it was the B-25 75 years ago, it's the B-2 today, and it's the B-21 Raider tomorrow. And so this is just an exceptional day to be an American and to get out. And I couldn't be honored to be the Chief of Staff and be part of the ceremony. So with that, let me just open up to your questions. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that you went to the Air Force Academy. How is the Air Force Academy still keeping the tradition of the Doolittle Tokyo Raiders alive in today's world?
Well, interestingly enough, when we had the ceremony this morning, there were a number of cadets from the history department that actually took part in the ceremony. And you'll see them today during the flyover. And these cadets from the history department have performed this ceremony every time we've lost a leader. And so, first, I would say within the history department of the academy, they keep that tradition alive. And then I will just tell you that when you're a cadet at the academy, one of the books that you're required to memorize, it was that way when I was there, it's the same way today, is a book called Contrails. And you memorize the stories and the history and the tradition of the long blue line as part of your cadet experience. And so the cadets today know this story, and they know what it means. And just like Cadet Goldfein, who took inspiration from this story so many years ago when I walked by these goblets, the cadets of today, they know about the Doolittle Raiders. They know about what they did. They know the story that was behind it. I just had a chance to have lunch with Lieutenant Colonel retired Dick Cole. And he was telling me the story of, you know, when he actually bailed out. And of course, he was the co-pilot for General Doolittle. When he bailed out, he actually said, I was lucky, so I landed in a tree. He said, but I didn't know when I was in the tree how far the ground was below me, so I spent the night in the tree. And so, you know, I actually knew that story because I'd learned that story as a cadet. So our cadets today are keeping the tradition alive.
The media here, we know this story pretty well. If you were speaking to a room full of
know, when I was thinking about today, and I'm gonna share this again when we do the flyover ceremony. When you look back at our history as a nation, there have been these times when extraordinary young men have stepped up and gone on the most daring, incredible missions, you know. And so I'll share two examples. If you think about it, founding, men who signed their name to the Declaration of Independence, right? Life, right? We commit our fortunes, right? Our lives, our sacred honor. They committed to a mission and took on an oppressor and showed that our nation stands for something. And we stand for freedom, and we are the beacon that the world looks to when it comes to freedom and democracy. And so just like our founding fathers that we celebrate every July 4th, the Raiders are 166 years later. The Raiders took on a similar challenge against yet another oppressor and signed up for yet another potential one-way mission. And the result of that mission is to turn the course of the world. And so if you take a look at what that mission did, and perhaps most importantly, 80 young men who stepped forward to go in harm's way and do what was at the time unthinkable and prove to Americans that we actually could win that war, and turn the course of events of that war. There's just an amazing story to tell that I think we as Americans want to never forget. And I think that's a big part of what today's all about.
Do you think in today's modern military, with a story like this, where we have 80 servicemen go on a mission like this, do you think this could happen again, or do you think we're too technologically advanced for a mission like this?
Well, the missions are different, but let me make, the courage with which our young men and women take on our enemies hasn't changed. It's part of the long blue line. I mean, you think about it. Whether you want to talk about the young airmen who are sitting right now in the northern tier, guarding the most destructive weaponry on the planet, providing 2/3 of America's nuclear triad, and the courage that takes to be up in some pretty harsh conditions. Whether you want to talk about what we're doing in the fight against ISIS, where we're taking, where we are taking on the fight to the enemy there, whether you want to talk about what we're doing in Iraq or Afghanistan or over Syria. So the courage that was in the hearts of these young men 75 years ago, their blood runs through the airmen today. And it's alive and well. And you see it in every airman you meet. And so while this was an extraordinary mission with historical consequences 75 years ago, the airmen of today are doing some incredibly courageous things. One of my favorite quotes from World War II came from General Hap Arnold, the commander of the Canadian Air War. And this was during some of the worst days of the daylight bombing campaign, right? So when you talk to the B-25 folks that are out here today, we were losing upwards of 10-15% of a formation every sword. And General Hap Arnold said, the problem with air power is we make it look too easy. Sometimes you wonder, what would Hap Arnold think today? We do make the incredibly hard sometimes look really easy. So the blood runs from dual Raiders in today's I was joking with Colonel Cole. So he has two grandsons that are serving, in the military. One who's serving in the United States Air Force, flying KC-135s. And then his other grandson is actually a West Point graduate now transitioning from the Army to the Air Force. was joking with him, I said, well, it's 1947 all over again.
Any other questions for General Goldfein?
So could you talk about why you felt it was important for you to be here today for this event?
Well, you know, as Chief of Staff of the Air Force, I represent 660,000 active Guard and Reserve civilian airmen who make up today's Air Force. And we're one Air Force. You can't tell us apart. Active Guard, Reserve, you really can't tell us apart. Of course, our civilian workforce is really the backbone of our Air Force when it comes to the work that we do, you know, especially here at Wright Pat. You know, the reality is, our average aircraft age is up there. 27 years average age for aircraft across the United States Air Force inventory right now. You know what keep those older airplanes flying? It's a daily challenge. I imagine there's not many people in this room that are driving 27-year-old cars right now. So guess who keeps a lot of these aircraft airborne? It's our magicians who are serving in the depots here at Wright Pat. So for me to have the opportunity to come here as Chief Staff of the Air Force and represent those great airmen, and to be part of history, to see the last goblet turned over in honor of Staff Sergeant David Batcher, who lost this year, and to sit down with Colonel Cole and listen to his stories that I've studied and grown up with my whole career. That's why I say at the opening, for me, this is sort of surreal to get a chance to do this as Chief of Staff of the Air Force. It really just doesn't get any better than this.
I'm sorry, that might be cumbersome. When you were a young boy, did you know about the dual array? And if you did, and of course I assume maybe you did, when you knew that you were going to go into the Air Force, it obviously gave you a feeling of pride and honor, but if you think back to that little boy, did it make you feel excited?
Yeah, you know, I mean, we're the barrier breakers, right? I mean, our byline could probably be, bring it, if it wasn't already somebody else's.
Right.
Because the reality is, you think about the United States Air Force, I mean, we're the ones that look at the great barrier barriers. We're the ones, I mean, this is all the services, but clearly as an airman, you can go through all these times in our history where somebody's thrown up a barrier and we've just crushed it, right? Speed of sound, bring it. Outer reaches of space, I got that, right? You want to break a gender barrier, we're all in. You want to break the race barrier, let's do it, right? So that's sort of in our blood, who we are, right? And quite frankly, it's that mindset of innovative spirit that there's nothing we can't accomplish working together. That is really what ties us together. So that was what drew me to the Air Force. It's what I hope draws so many other young men and women to want to come be part of us, to be able to do something that's so much bigger than themselves, to be part of an organization that celebrates who we are, where we're going. Right now, as I look to the future, I could not be more excited about not only the technologies that are available today and are showing great promise, some of the technologies that are being developed right here at Wright Pat in our labs. I cannot tell you the number of tactics, techniques, and procedures that we are employing in combat today that came from the mind of the staff sergeant. Trust me, there are plenty out there that we are doing. You're right? And so that's who we are. That's the organization. So you sort of think through that very innovative spirit and who we are as an Air Force, how we like to tackle challenges. And then you look at the Doolittle Raiders, and then you can see where I look at it and say, that's us. That's classic Air Force, right? That's classic Army Air Corps. They saw a barrier, and they said, we got this. And so for me, that's a big part of this, celebrating this way, celebrating these young men, you know, who stood up, who took on the cause of freedom, and changed it. And quite frankly, you know, you could make an argument that who knows how the world would have played out, right? Had they not been successful on that rig. We don't know. There's no way we can go back and tell for sure. We do know that it made a significant difference. And for sure, in the minds of the American people, it changed their attitude that said, okay, we can win this thing. We can hold targets at risk anywhere on the world. And that's become a core mission of the United States Air Force. We provide the President options. Right? My job is to make sure that we organize, train, equip, and present ready air forces, air and space forces, and cyber forces to the combatant command so they can hold targets at risk, right, and give options to the President. That's no different than what Doolittle and Bill Doolittle and his 79 Airmen did way back when.
No, I agree.